Hey everybody, Matt Pinfield here. Thanks so much for waiting. We were a little late today, but there were some technical issues. As you can see, I'm in a different place today because I'm actually in a real studio, Rolling Live Studios. We were doing the show from my living room, of course. In a Lonely Place with Matt Pinfield. It's the name of the show. Really happy to be back. It's really no secret. The reason I left was to go into rehab. I mean, the COVID thing for me, it was a bit difficult, a guy being in recovery and being sober and clean was, it definitely had its pull on me. But the good news is I'm back. I'm extremely healthy. I feel great. Yesterday, Rolling Stone published a story where I literally share, and I'm completely transparent about my entire story about what happened and my journey through recovery. And I just want to thank all the incredible people that made comments, the thousands of people on all social media from Paris, Australia, and then all the people here in the States and UK that reached out with love and support, and people that were sharing their stories. I'm glad that I could, make other people understand they're not alone if they're going through similar struggles or they have a family member. It means the world to me. So that's why I put it all out there, because I'm a no bullshit guy anyway, you know that. So I'm really, really happy to be healthy. I mean, you can see I'm looking really good. No beard because until my barber opens up again, I'm not going to grow my beard back. But anyway, I'm just really excited to be here. And, I love our guest today. I've been a big fan of hers and her band, from the very, very beginning, playing her on the radio at the alternative radio station in Asbury Park, New Jersey, all the way back to the Epitaph record and Single Shove and all the way through. And she's such an amazing, amazing human being. So I have Donita Sparks here from L7. Donita, welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Matt. Great to be here. And thank you for having me on your show. And I was commenting earlier before we went on the air that your background looks fabulous and you look fabulous.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Clean living is good. I'm sober now, like 65 days today, since, I feel very, very good. And I'm very proud of the work that I'm doing, and I'm helping others. But anyway, Donita, it's so good to have you here. I wanted to talk to you about, as you know, our format, we talk about 7 of your favorite albums in the second half of the show. But you've got such an incredible story. Now, you grew up in what I consider to be a great rock and roll area anyway, which is outside of Chicago, like Oak Lawn. Tell me about what it was like for you as before your move to Los Angeles at the age of 19. What was it like in your youth years and listening to the radio and the rock and roll that you loved? Tell me what you were listening to and the things that really, really touched you.
Well, first of all, I have 3 older sisters who all had great taste in music. So I was blessed in that sense. There was always cool music going on in the house. I was like an AM radio junkie when I was a kid, just like turning the dial all night long. And I would listen to the pop radio stations. And then I started discovering the soul stations in Chicago, which were excellent. And so I was into soul and funk and disco and anything on the AM radio. And then I discovered like the country side of the AM radio, and that was great too because I was hearing Patsy Cline for the first time and Hank Williams and stuff like that. So I'm kind of into all kinds of music if it's good, but I have very high standards. I have simple tastes, but I'm hard to please in my music. So but that's, I love bubblegum. I love, like when I was in high school, the current bands of the day that were very popular, I wasn't really that into. I'm not going to mention them, but like we're talking like, mid to late 70s stuff. Sorry, that's my cat. She's making a lot of noise. So the stuff that I really loved as a kid, rock-wise, were Rolling Stones, the Beatles, David Bowie, Velvet Underground. I was lucky that I had those cool, really cool bands and Bob Marley was always around our house. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really cool. It's great when you have an older brother and sister that have good taste. It was like my brother, buying me the first Zeppelin album when I was 9, or and even like something like the Dead American Beauty, or John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. I remember him buying me these records, and
Yeah.
I didn't have any idea of the social, the social aspect or commentary, the things that were being said in there. I just knew I loved the music, so it was really cool, and he bought me a lot of great records. But I, like you, was glued to that AM radio. In New York it was like ABC and NBC, and was it WLS and stations like that? Yeah,
Yeah.
in Chicago, right? Yeah. It's
And then the African Americans, the soul stations were like WGCI, and the cool thing about WGCI, they had two really good soul stations, but one of them played like a kick-ass gospel live performance every Sunday. Those fabulous gospel choirs in Chicago. And they would be rocking so that was always fun to tune into too. I'd be like, man, they are kicking ass in this gospel choir this morning. So yeah, just the whole spectrum. And then I started creeping into FM. But I by the time I was kind of creeping into FM, that's when sort of new wave and punk rock was starting to happen. So I liked Elvis Costello. I liked, B-52s, of course, the Ramones, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
I was like you. I was kind of getting really disillusioned with some of the stuff that was really popular in the late 70s. So when punk happened, I embraced it. You know what I mean? I bought the import singles of the early, Pistols records, like Pretty Vacant and Anarchy and God Save the Queen, and then the first Dead Boys album and the new wave stuff I loved. I went to see all those bands as a kid, when I was in high school. One weekend we did The Police for $2 on a Thursday, Elvis Costello on the Saturday, and Joe Jackson Looks Sharp. It was like this year's model, all those. And we rode around in a station wagon, but we saw that great music, and it was so exciting. There was just a new great record coming out every day, it felt like.
Yeah, I saw the Talking Heads. I saw the Cramps. They either opened for the Talking Heads or because at that time I couldn't get into clubs yet, but I was going to Paragon Ballroom and seeing the cool bands coming through town, and so yeah, that was but it was not what what all the stoners were into and stuff. Like I was kind of I started out as a really kind of a kid who was into sports and all that stuff, and then freshman year I just went and it turned over to other pleasures and other music sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really cool. So tell me about when you moved to Los Angeles and met Susie. I mean, I think that was such a turning point in your life, and you guys finding each other. Tell me about those early days.
The early days where I moved to LA when I was 19, and I very luckily got a job at the LA Weekly, and I was just a messenger. So I was even using an LA Weekly vehicle because I had no car of my own. So I was cruising around LA, being a messenger for the LA Weekly. But then the art department liked me, so they said, "Hey, do you want to apprentice? Do you want to apprentice in the art department?" So getting into the art department, I started meeting all these artists and musicians of Los Angeles in the underground scene. And Susie Gardner was a friend of a friend, and we were both in other bands at the time when we met, but when we finally did meet through friends, she played me some stuff she was working on. I was like, that's what I want to do. So she kind of had she was already going in this hard rock direction, even though we were art punks, so which was kind of fresh at the time, like punk rockers doing hard rock in a very, in a style that was very Flintstones. Like we're not big noodlers, so it's kind of like our recipe for rock is sort of like a stripped down metal or something.
It was a combination, real combination of that metal and punk edge. So it was really crunchy, which was what was so cool about it.
Yeah, you like this person.
Yeah, and I love the story about behind it, the name L7 too, and that used to be that whole, for like during the beat period, like that was the expression for square. And they used to use that in TV shows. Wasn't that also in like maybe the Flintstones or Jetsons or? Yeah, I remember.
It's also in the song "Wooly Bully" by Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. They say, "Let's not be L7. Come and learn to dance, Wooly Bully." So it's in there. You know, it was like on the Flintstones, they went, "Oh, the real L7" or something like that. So yeah.
Remember how cool those cartoons were when they would have bands on them, like the Way Outs and the Bo Brummelstones were on the Flintstones, and Jet Screamer on the Jetsons. Remember Jet Screamer?
I don't remember Jet Screamer, but I loved when cartoons would have rock bands on, and I think didn't the Munsters have a rock band on too?
Yeah, they had the Standells. The Standells were like that, that LA band who were like on a bunch of the garage rock compilations. They're really cool.
I thought they were from Boston.
They were from Boston, but yeah, you're right. The Standells because they did Dirty Water, but they actually were on. They shot out here the Munsters. They did the Munsters show. Yeah, they did sometimes Good Guys Don't Wear White too, which was such a cool song.
I love that song. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of that, great. I loved your documentary, "Pretend We're Dead," the L7 story, which was so cool. I love it. It starts out with you guys just fucking around in the vehicle just to flip people out, like pretending you're having sex. I mean, there's just so many great moments in the documentary. So people watch it. I suggest you watch this L7 documentary. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it. If you have a membership, you can get to see the show. Or if you don't have it, you can, there's a small fee at some of the other streaming services. But I loved the documentary. It was so cool the way it was done, and a lot of the footage that you guys had from back then.
We bought a camcorder, which cost us a fortune at the time. It was like $1,000, but we all chipped in to buy it, and we were shooting for years, and we even had earlier footage, but our camera got stolen. So the documentary starts, I believe, in 1991 with our footage. But we're just lucky that we had all that footage to use in the doc, and I think it's a really great time capsule of that era. We also have a ton of other footage of other bands. That that we shot from the side of the stage, like Fugazi and Nirvana, and so we've just got other stuff that we were shooting too.
There's fun moments where you see all those people in the documentary, like when you're dancing in, like I guess one of the trailers, Nick Cave's dancing and having fun, and you see Nick in this really kind of fun, like just joking around because a lot of times with his music he's super serious, obviously. Yeah. Years ago, I saw the birthday party at City Gardens in Trenton when they first came over, which was amazing, and interviewed him. But I love that footage because it just shows you guys all having fun, guards down, Eddie Vedder, of course, that one still, but everybody, Courtney, it's really fun. So tell me about when you did the first Sub Pop single with Shove, and you realized that it was starting to get traction around the world. Like the UK was playing it, John Peel, people like that. How did that feel? Did it feel like it was a world away, or how exciting was that?
It was incredibly exciting because we kind of had our eye on Sub Pop anyway, because they seemed like they really had it together. Like we were on Epitaph first, and Epitaph is really cool, but they didn't have their distribution system like they do now. They didn't, and Brett Gurwitz is a great friggin' guy, and they just didn't have they didn't have all their ducks in a row at that time. Sub Pop was starting to really get their ducks in a row, and so we were sort of had our eye on them, and then we got them to come to our show, and they signed us up for a Sub Pop Singles Club, and then the song Shove started to take off. So that just felt like very, the momentum was just starting to go, and it felt fabulous. Because we had been a band already for 5 years, and it was just depressing. It was so hard, and no one would come to our shows, and we were just sort of freaks, and people would just stand there looking at us, like not really knowing how to react to us. But once we got on Sub Pop, it started to people were very embracing, and it was great.
And people were really looking at the time. And so Slash, I mean, obviously one of the reasons you guys signed with Slash is because you loved a lot of stuff that was on there, like Violent Femmes, of course, you know what I mean? Gun Club were on there originally, and there were just so many cool artists. Tell me about that experience, because when you signed with Slash, were they already part of the Warner system, or were they? Oh, they were at that time.
They were, yeah. And I know we're lucky to be associated with Slash too, that we were on Slash because of all those bands that you said. And you know, they were a part of Reprise at that time, and I think the deal was like, you know, if we did a certain amount of sales at Slash, we would then kind of leapfrog up to Reprise. So that was a bit of a, it was a weird, it was a collaboration, but also, you know, I think at that point Slash started to, I don't know, maybe the head of Slash started to lose interest in being a label head. I think he just wanted to be a painter. The guy was an actual artist, and he Bob Biggs, and I think he just wanted to be an artist again. So
he started with X, right? Of course, and you know, doing the early stuff like X and Failure, of course. Later, Failure were great too. You know, they were on there.
Yeah. And who was oh God, I hate when I forget bands' names, but they were really and the Outside. They had a totally original sound. They got signed after us on Slash. I can't. Oh, it's killing me. But they were great too. And yeah, and I think they had the Blasters back in the day as well. Slash did. So yeah, you know, it was a very cool label to be on. You know.
Yeah, they were a great label. What were you saying? Was it Soul Coughing? I love Soul Coughing. Yeah, Mike Dowdy's a good friend of mine. Love him. That was so good. Down to this. You remember that song? That was great.
Yeah.
All those albums, Ruby Varoom and the one right, Irresistible Bliss. Those records were great. You know.
Yeah.
Great. What? Yeah. But love that stuff. So then all of a sudden, you know, I mean, you started to get play. I mean, Pretend We're Dead. You know, literally. I mean, If Bricks Are Heavy. When that album came out. It just exploded. And I mean, the song, it is one of the greats. I mean, it's so good. It's recorded so well, but the performance is it's just one of those songs that when it comes on, you feel it. You feel it. It completely rocks. I love that track. And I've always, you know, we played the shit out of it in the radio back then. And, you know, and would play shit lists, but you know, bleep it. You know what I mean? Back in the day too, you know, which is funny. I used to have fun doing that on the radio, was editing, like, or just putting a bleep over it or cutting out the thing on songs like that, or fucking Hostile by Pantera, just like to do Pantera, to do some interesting things, but on the radio. But I mean, that was an incredible thing because right all of a sudden, then you guys were getting in, we were kind of at that period, you'd been together for a while, but then you were thrown into all of a sudden, things were starting to happen. There were major expectations. You were getting ready to tour the world and do a bunch of press. And I love that it's covered in the documentary. Show you going to England. And one of the really beautiful moments is when you go, who's paying for this? When you get in the car and they look at you and go, you are, which is like, is so the truth about the record company situation. Like, all that marketing money, oh, it's coming out of your profits on your record.
Well, and also, you know, listen, we were picked up with a limousine when we arrived in England, and we had, you know, I don't even think we had ever been in a limousine before. And Jennifer said to our press person who picked us up, "Who's paying for this?" And she said, "You are." But it was all in good fun. But it is actually the truth. Like every time you get a perk like that, it's going on your accounting tally sheet. And that's, it's your debt. You are paying for that stuff. So, you know, but it's fun to be picked up in a limo too. It's a cool experience. You know, like after we were in a van for so many years and really just slugging it out in the underground. And then we got a hit in the underground and it felt so great. And then we were like, you know, it's kind of a natural progression. Like, okay, it's time to be on a major now. And everybody was signing to major labels. Then we got on a bus, a tour bus. So it was actually a really cool journey. I think that we got to experience all of it. And it felt very natural. It felt like a natural progression, like we slugged it out. We paid our dues. Then it was, then it was cool that I didn't feel guilty about being picked up in a limo at all. Like I had no problem.
No, you shouldn't at all, because you know what? Hey, there are lesser talents that have gotten picked up in limos and don't deserve it and haven't paid their dues, right?
Yes. No. I was just like, we deserve to be in a goddamn limo. Why not? Why not us? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was going to say, it was just also great to take that journey with you in the film and see how you were loved in Japan when you got there. The people were going crazy in Japan, and the trip to Brazil was amazing. To land in Rio or Sao Paulo, and they were all chanting L7, and they were going crazy. So tell me about that experience, because Brazil at that period of the 90s was really also quite dangerous. It's not to say it isn't anymore, but it's less than that period of time. It was pretty crazy. There was the secret police that were like, shooting people that were coming down from the hills. And there was a lot of like robbery and muggings. And, there's a famous story my friend told me, who is Portuguese, who knows about, all the culture there, about somebody walking a tourist down, literally like down by the beach on the boardwalk side of things. And somebody coming up in a skateboard, one kid would take a box cutter and slash the back of your pants where the wallet was, and the other one would come up right behind him and catch the wallet, and then they'd be gone.
Whoa.
Pretty crazy ways. You know what I mean? So I just thought that was pretty amazing. But it was so cool because I love Brazil. I've been to Rio twice. I was there in the 90s, and this past year for Rock in Rio, hosting a broadcast, and it was just the people. They're such big fans of rock. They still are.
No, and it's very telling too that like I think that the Ramones' biggest show they ever played was in Brazil, like to 80,000 people, which just kind of goes to show that like, yeah, Brazilians, they love their rock and roll. And I think like that footage of us arriving in Brazil, I think like the labels would actually leak the information of when you were arriving. So there was just this frenzy of like, unless the kids just figured it out, I don't know, but we were on the same flight with Nirvana coming over. So they were chanting our name, they were chanting Nirvana's name, and we had to have armed guards in our little vehicle. And we had a police escort on the way to the show. So that was wild. That was like, it was like something out of Narcos or something. Like the police just were like in these kind of army outfits. It was
intense, absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of, believe it or not, I was actually at Reading that weekend in '92 when you guys played. I was there, because the headliners that the year were so many great bands in the bill. Public Enemy, Wonder Stuff, and Nirvana headlined. But there were so many bands that we know that were on that list. And you guys were great, but it's typical of those English audiences sometimes, to be throwing shit and doing the shit they did. It was a mud bath by the final date at Nirvana headlined, remember? And I loved what you did. I thought that they used tampon, taking that out and just throwing it and saying, fuck you, was one of the coolest, most rock and roll things. And of course the crowd deserves it, because for me, it's like, hey, you want to be assholes? Here's what we'll do. And, there were certainly fans of yours there too, but there's always there was definitely that kind of hooligan mentality sometimes you'll find at the shows in the UK. So tell me about that experience for you. Was that like, it was kind of crazy that day, right? Because it was the sound and everything else. They didn't let you sound check, right?
Yeah. Oh no, there was no sound check, and it was like the second or third day of Reading, and so the whole field was just mud, and that field is also a sheep pasture. So that mud was mixed with sheep shit as well. So we were being pelted with mud, and we had such high expectations for that show. Like, Reading can make a band. Like if you have a great Reading show, you can be on top of the Pops next week or whatever. So we had very high expectations, and it turned out to be kind of like a slow motion, like mind fuck meltdown, because we were being pelted with mud. And so, like Susie got hit on her headstock with a big clump of mud, and we were going out of tune, and our gear had been lost at the airport, so we were playing on borrowed gear as well. So it was just a recipe for a tampon throw.
Yes, it was, and it was a great thing. It was a great reaction, and I love the other thing that happened in the UK on that show, The Word, because what was so great is what I loved about it was just how so rock you were and cool and punk, the punk attitude in the middle of the show, which is very typical of a British show like that, where they'll have these really the corny dancers and all these other things, even on top of the pops. One minute they'd be like having the pants dancers, and then they would have Stranglers playing something like 5 minutes, something really nihilistic that people aren't even listening to the lyrics.
Yeah.
So, but I love that when you dropped your drawers on camera there, but you kept the guitar, but it was just, you know what I mean? It was really cool. Tell me, were they you could see their expressions. Were they freaking out? The cameraman behind you, when you dropped your pants on TV, he was excited. He had the camera behind you and he was going, but what was the rest of the reaction in the room when that happened?
Well, it was a live show, and it was kind of a variety show. They had people being interviewed. I think Toad the Wet Sprocket were the other band on the show. I'm not sure. And Oliver Reed, the actor, was one of the guests. And anyway, it was a kind of a peculiar, weird show. But from what I understand, when I dropped my pants, the camera, the director was saying, "No bum shots, no bum shots," but whoever was in the control room made sure that there was bum shots of me.
Yeah.
But
It was right there.
yeah. So, but what was funny was that when I dropped my pants, I was standing on top of the Marshall amp. So to get down from it, my pants were around my ankles. It was very precarious. I could have broken my neck, honestly, because how do you walk with your pants down? It's, let alone jump down from an amplifier. So it was, but then it's still one of Britain's raunchiest moments on television or something.
Yeah, it's funny how that stuff creeped up in all these compilations of the most shocking moments in music history, which I think that's fantastic. It's great to hold that crown for some things like that.
Yeah,
and also, I love that they said that they didn't ban you from the show. They didn't ban the band from the show. They said they would have you back.
Yeah, you know what though? I don't think we were on another American show. Probably 120 minutes.
Yeah.
That, but we had done Letterman before that. But after that, we were on Jon Stewart when Jon Stewart had his, not The Daily Show. He had a show before that.
Yeah, the Jon Stewart show. And you also, you did Letterman. Letterman was cool because you guys, I just loved how loud you were. It was great. It was it just had that crunch and it sounded good. And I said, and you got Paul Schaefer behind you guys trying to rock out with. That was pretty funny.
You know what though? Paul Schaefer was so friggin' nice. The whole band was really nice, and actually the bass player encouraged Dee to knock over her drum kit because it was her birthday. Was it her birthday? I think it might have been her birthday. I'm not sure, but he encouraged her. She's like, "I want to knock over my kit," and he's like, "Yeah, go for it." Even though I don't think David Letterman was very happy about that because he was, but he was nice too. She gave him a drumstick.
Yeah, he was cool. He definitely loves music. He's such a huge fan of and friend of Dave Grohl's, right? Our old friend. So they're tight, which is a very, very cool thing. Yeah. And Paul Schaefer, everybody I know that's that's played on the show says that he's really cool. The only artist that wouldn't play on the show with them was Nine Inch Nails said no because they're like, we don't want to do a duet. And at that point, it was one of those things where I think you had to have him part of the band play with you. It was part of the prerequisite that NBC had.
I don't think it was a prerequisite. We could have put our foot down and say, no, we don't want Paul Schaefer's band to play with us. But we were kind of when in Rome.
And just have fun, right? Have fun with it. Just let it go, right?
just let it go. You know, like we were just we were thrilled to be on his show, and we were thrilled that Paul Schaefer's band was going to be playing with us. We were like, what the hell?
I mean, it was American institution. The show is such, it's a big part of culture. And he's a huge music fan as well. I'm going to get into your albums next, but I just wanted to quickly talk about Rock for Choice is just one of the really great things that you've done with philanthropy and that the band did. And I loved all the artists that band together that played with you and did those shows. Tell me about that, because I thought that was just such a great thing, just to see the camaraderie of the artists that got involved with Rock for Choice,
Yeah, we had amazing bands playing Rock for Choice shows. And, even at the time, I didn't even realize that, like, if you play a benefit in Chicago, you can't really do your own show in Chicago. Like, it kind of, like, it is such a, such a money contribution from these bands because, like, they can't, like I think Nirvana played one night as a benefit, the next night was their own show. But like just the fact that like bands were on, they take a financial hit if they play I mean, I suppose it's a tax write-off too. But anyway, whatever. I was a little naive about asking. I was so naive about asking bands that I just asked everybody, and so did Jennifer, and they ended up saying yes. So. Yeah, we had the creme de la creme of that era on Rock for Choice shows.
Yeah, mention some of the bands to everybody because it's so great.
Well, we had Pearl Jam, we had Nirvana, we had Fugazi, we had Hole, we had the Lunatics, we had Joan Jett. We were the Blackhearts one night for Joan Jett at a Rock for Choice show, which was really great because her band was not out in L.A., so we were the Blackhearts. Yeah, just Iggy Pop, The Offspring, anybody you can, Bikini Kill, Lunatics, Babes in Toyland, everybody did.
So cool, and it was it was really great that everybody got involved. And I think what you're also mentioning is I think a lot of people out there don't realize sometimes when you're a band and you play in a market, even if it's a benefit, they have these rules with the promoters that you're not allowed to play another show in that area for a long period of time. So it's a true sacrifice if you're going to do that kind of thing, unless it's a private gig,
Right.
because the promoters and the concert companies have these rules that you have different markets and you can't be that close in the same amount of time. So that's great.
The dreaded radius clause, which also happens with, if you play a festival, you can't play a club show unless it's like, kind of secret or whatever. So, I can understand their thinking on that, but it can be a hassle for a band. So the bands that agreed to do these shows, it was special tip of the hat to them for that.
Yeah, I think it was great that they did. And I want to talk about some of your favorite albums now. I also want to mention, now right after our show today, your show, The High Low Show, I think is it the 7th episode or how many are there now?
It is the 7th episode. We've been on a hiatus for the last couple of weeks. So this is episode 7, and it's a good one. It's with my special guest is Skin from the band Skunk Nancy, and she's phenomenal. And so the High Low Show continues.
That's great. I'm really glad you're doing it. It's fun too. You guys have so much fun doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. We have to, like during periods like this when the COVID has been happening, we have to, bring good energy and good spirits to everybody, and just have a good time. And I love what you do with the show. So for those people watching right now, make sure you check it out when we are done. But I want to talk about 7 of your favorite albums. So I want you to tell us a little about why you love them. And the first one on your list is it's one of my favorite records of all time too. It's David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Yeah. Tell me why you love that, Donita.
I just think every song on it is fantastic. And it tells a story, and it was just a fabulous concept album that was a complete success artistically. And I'm a big Bowie fan. Like I love all of his records, and so choosing I wouldn't. I don't even know if Ziggy Stardust would be my favorite Bowie album, but it's just every song on it is great. So and his look was fabulous for that. And he also made it a short-lived thing. It was just an art piece from beginning to end, and then that was it. So
Yeah, that record is just it takes you on such an incredible journey. I love that record so much, but all those records, right? I mean, it's hard to pick one. One day it might be Diamond Dogs or Aladdin Sane or, you
yeah.
know what I mean? Or Scary Monsters. There's just so many great, Hunky Dory, right? I mean,
Flow, Station to Station, Young Americans, all of them were just like, oh my God. When I was growing up in the 70s, it was just like when Bowie had a new album out, my sister would always get it. And it would just be like, like he was such a enigma and such a rock star, just like that's when they made rock stars, like, so he was just, and he always had a new look. Every record, he had a new look. And it was just like, what's he going to do next? It was so exciting. Such an exciting artist.
Yeah, one of the greats. We all miss him right now, that's for sure. Now, another great band that I know are, contemporaries of yours and are just such great guys. We've had Joey Santiago had done the show from the band before, and I love Joey and the whole band. But you picked Surfer Rose, the first full-length Pixies album, as your second record. They had the EP out before that, Come On Pilgrim, but this was the first full album. Tell me why it's so special to you, Donita.
Well, because when I first heard that album, I think I had heard a couple songs of theirs before that, but just their sound is so fresh and so unique, even to this day. I think that they're one of the best. I think they're one of the best bands in rock and roll. Their songs are just, I saw their reunion show at Coachella. Was it Coachella? I'm not sure. But it was just like every song was just like, oh yeah, that one, that one, that one. I just think that their songs are great and their sound is great and just very unique, very fresh still. So, yeah.
And it's amazing how many TV shows, and I talked to Joey about it here on the show, and films still use Where Is My Mind from that album. It ends up in everything, But it's got Cactus and Gigantic, and Bowie covered Cactus, and I love, it's just such a great record. It's so good that they're still making music. They almost got caught during this COVID pandemic in Asia because they were literally about to leave. And I was with Joey one night, and we went out to see our friends do a comedy show on a Friday night, and he was supposed to leave on Sunday, and then I saw him Monday. I'm like, Joey, what? And he goes, no, man, they canceled it already. So right before the COVID, they were about to hit the road again.
Oh, crazy! And I'm also a big fan of the Breeders too. So I think Kim Deal's voice is just otherworldly. It's just wow. I just think she's got an otherworldly quality to her on her own as well. So.
Yeah, and so she's still doing her thing, and those guys are doing theirs at this point, but they made great music together.
Yeah.
Gigantic on that album that you picked is so good, too, with her. I mean, one of the classics, right? It's so amazing. Yeah. Now, the next record that you picked is the third Ramones album, and the last one that Tommy played drums on, which was Rocket to Russia, which is such a cool record. I mean, still at that point, the songs were all like about 2.5 minutes long, and or less, and so great. So tell me why you love that one.
Well, that was the first Ramones album I heard. My sister brought it home from college, and I literally walked into the basement, and she was playing it, and I was like, "What is this?" Because it just sounded like youth. It sounded so youthful, and so it didn't sound like these other bands that were popular at the time. That were on the radio in the rock world, like these overblown kind of epic bands, just getting very long-winded and stuff. It was 2 minutes. It was catchy. It was the fastest rock and roll I had ever heard. And I loved the humor and the dementedness of their lyrics. It was just like so American and so like boing. Although I love their first album, Leave Home, I love Road to Ruin, I love End of the Century, but Rocket to Russia holds a special place in my heart just because I love,
We're a happy family.
we're
Happy.
happy.
Oh my God, sitting here in Queens eating refried beans. I mean, all those lyrics are so great. And you get the sense of humor. Like you said, there's those covers, Surfing Bird, Do You
Yeah,
Want to Dance? But you got Sheena's a Punk Rocker on there. And another song that I love so much is I Can't Give You Anything. That's such a great
yeah.
oh
And
record.
Rockaway Beach is great. Uh, yeah, just it's just so. I don't know. It impressed me so much as a kid because it just seemed so American, and the way that they dressed, everything was just like the classic American white dude. You know what I mean? Like suburban dude. Like that's how guys looked. So or that's how they should have looked. I should say.
The cool ones did, right? The cool ones like that, like
Yeah.
that. Those first five albums that you mentioned are all really fantastic. And it was so divisive back then. I was explaining to people that when I bought that first record and I was, on my birthday in 1976 and I was a kid, some of my cool friends got it. And the other ones were like, what the fuck is that? We don't want to hear this. And now, of course, you hear Blitzkrieg Bop and I Want to Be Sedated in every stadium, at every sporting event. So they became a part of the American fabric that they deserved to be, just not when they were all alive.
Yeah.
So, but I love those guys, they were great. Now, the next album you picked, speaking of your hometown area, is a band and an album that I think is so underrated that I love and loved so much and played lots of songs off this in the 90s on the radio and also at MTV. Urge Overkill, Saturation. What a great record. Talk to me about why you love that one.
What a great record Saturation is. And at that time, a lot of grunge was happening. And grunge is great, but there's a depressive element to grunge. And not so much L7, but some of the other bands, it's really kind of I won't say heroin soaked. It's more like just the great Northwest and the rain and there's a depressive element to grunge. But Urge Overkill just had a lot of life to it and had a lot of humor. Again, one of my favorite songs on that album is Erica Kane, because I was a big All My Children fan, and I was like, oh my God, they're singing a song about Erica Kane, in which I just thought was so feminist of them, and also just very cool, and it just showed their sense of humor and coolness.
Yeah, they were great. I used to love, like on their earlier records too, doing, the pictures of them with martinis and, like Supersonic Storybook and all that early stuff. But I love that record too. And Erica Kane, it's so funny. They are seriously the biggest All My Children fans. And they were back then, because I remember when I was talking to Nash Cato about it, he's like, yeah, he goes, we go home. I watch the kids every day that I can. And he calls it the kids because it's All My Children. But that song rocks, doesn't it? It's like when it comes out of a Dropout on that record.
Yeah.
And then the singles, that were on there, like Sister Havana and Positive Bleeding, Back on Me. That's a record that people really need to revisit from the 90s. It deserves so much more credit than it gets. The next record you picked is from a band from the town I was born in, Athens, Georgia. Even though most of them were actually originally born in New Jersey. B-52s, the debut album, an incredible first album. Talk to me about that.
When I first heard them, I was like, oh my God, this is my dream band. Because I love a lot of 60s music, and I love really groovy, goofy pop. I was mentioning earlier, I love bubblegum, and this was a demented outer space bubblegum with surf riffs and really great guitar playing, and the vocals of the gals in that band was just outstanding. And speaking of otherworldly, when they would sing together or harmonize, it was just and then Fred's voice would come in, and it was just the perfect band, and the hairdos and the style. You could tell that they were bohemians and living this bohemian life that I aspired to.
Yeah, which was very cool. And it reminded me when you said that of you being in, speaking of John Waters, you were in Serial Mom when you guys played Camel Lips and did the gas chamber song that he said, I don't care what the song's about, but just you gotta have a song called Gas Chamber, and you guys performed in there. And John Waters is so cool, and all those movies were great. That was how was that experience? Because he's a guy who celebrates that true look of like late 50s, early 60s thing. He loves all that, and he's always said that in his books like Shock Value and some of his other things and during his interviews. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, well, we're such big John Waters fans, and when that offer came to us from him, I was like, is this some kind of joke that our manager's playing us? Like, who's playing? Who's what's that Ashton Kutcher show? Who's playing? What's it called? Punking us right now. Who's punking us right now? And it was actually John Waters who wanted us in his film, and dream come true stuff. He's a great guy, and he's such a master at what he does. And I just think it's so messed up that he's not really making films right now, because I think he has trouble getting funding for his films because they're just so unique. And I think it's tougher for him to make films these days, which is really screwed up, because he's writing more books than he's making films, and his books are great, but
I think it's because he took so many chances, and it was definitely a lot of people when they saw the early films like Pink Flamingos and Female Trouble, and I mean his sense of humor with Divine and Edie the Egg Lady and all those people in those early movies. And then as he got more mainstream, like Polyester was such a great film where you had to scratch and sniff. You went in a movie theater. You probably did this to you go in, they give you a scratch and sniff sheet, and then the number comes up on the screen, and you scratch it and smell it. And it was in Smell-O-Vision, that movie, and Steve Bader from the Dead Boys was in it, and Tab Hunter and all these people. That was great because I was in high school, and me and my high school girlfriend, all our friends we saw Polyester because we were John Waters fans, and it was nuts. One time they hold roses they're torturing Divine in the film, like not really torturing, but just torturing him, with, teasing him, doing crazy shit to him, and they hold up flowers, and then right after that, or a pizza or something, and then they put like moldy sneakers in front of it. So you're like scratching it, and you smell it, and you're like, oh my God, it makes you sick in the theater. He was just so cool. But I can imagine that some of his sense of humor and the way he likes to push the envelope, especially in days like today with cancel culture and all the other stuff, it's probably very, very hard. So I hope that turns around so, artists like him don't have to be censored.
On set, he works really hard. He's pretty serious on set. So it's just kind of, it's kind of funny because, he's very serious on set. And like you mentioned before, Nick Cave dancing on our bus and stuff, like Nick's very serious in his public persona, and yet he can get goofy at times too. So I love these people who are like, they present themselves one way, and then like they've got this other side of them that like people just don't get to see, but John is incredibly serious on set.
Yeah. And I love that, like I said, what you just said, because that's one of the great surprises in your documentaries. Nick Cave dancing, having fun with his shirt off in the tour bus. Yeah. I bet a lot of his fans would be like, wow, oh, look at Nick. He's letting loose in such a big way.
Yeah.
It was just really, and seeing Ian MacKaye in there. So the next album that you picked was the Stones album, December's Children and Everybody's, which was a cool album that came out at the end of 1965. Tell me about why that's the Stones album, because I know you love a lot of Stones records.
I threw that one out just because I think that's one of the first Stones albums I ever bought. But I think I love it because they're still doing covers, but they're just starting to write together too. So it's like got some of the earliest Jagger Richards compositions on there, and yet it's still got a bunch of covers. And probably my favorite cover, one of my favorite covers of all time, is the Stones doing Route 66.
Yeah, their version's great.
Oh my God, what a jam. Whenever I DJ, which is not very often, but whenever I DJ, I always play the Stones' Route 66 because people are just like, oh my God, I've never heard this before. And it's like,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably know the Depeche Mode version more than that, but it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Like, and the thing about that record too, in England at the time, a lot of the songs that they'd written, same thing would happen with the Beatles and people like that. The songs that were actually album tracks, other artists wanted, because they loved the Stones and the hits they wrote, they would do covers like on that album. Like Blue Turns to Gray was done by Cliff Richard, or The Singer Not the Song, which are great tunes, right? But the English artists and producers would hand pick them for their artists to record, and just like whatever single wasn't on a Stones or Beatles album, they would use. So, yeah, it was very, very cool. But I do love that record too. And it's got Get Off My Cloud on it, and As Tears Go By. It's a great collection of songs. Now, the final record that you picked was Brian Wilson's Smile, when he decided to redo that record. So tell me why that's one of your favorites.
well, I had first heard some of the songs from Smile when it was on another Beach Boys record, I think called Beach Boys 2020 or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, this is high art. It sounded like high art to me. Like I love the Beach Boys, but like that was getting into real like bizarre stuff. And then, later discovering that Brian never got to release that album as a full album, the fact that he got to go back 30 years later and do it, it's just a phenomenal album. It's like a symphony. I think he referred to Pet Sounds as Pet Sounds as a teenage ode to God or something like that. I don't know, but that's Smile sounds like a symphony to me. It's great. I saw him perform it live with the Wondermints. I think it was the Wondermints, and it was
the Wondermints. Those guys have been with him for a long time now. They really have been a great addition to Brian's career, because the Wondermints have just like they nail all those songs. They're so good.
One of the best concerts I've ever seen was Brian Wilson doing that with the Wondermints at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was just like, it was fabulous.
Yeah, and those songs like Heroes and Villains and Cabinescence, you know what I mean? They're all so, so good, and Van Dyke Parks, right? He
Yes.
wrote the lyrics and, all that stuff, and worked on those things. And I love that. I'm glad that did you ever hear any of the box set that came out of Smile, the Beach Boys one? There was like that insane extensive box set as well.
Just on Smile? No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, believe it or not, you'll have to check it out on like streaming one day when you're just hanging out in the background. There's some really cool stuff on it. But yeah, that was a really great, fully realized performance of that album, the way that they did that and took it from those. I love that.
Yeah.
Donita, I know your show's coming up next, and I don't want to hold you up because you've got other things to do, but I loved spending the time with you. It was really great. And I have one more question to ask you. Do you think when everything passes with COVID, do you think you guys will, as L7, that you and Susie and Jen and Dee will go out and do some shows again? Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, well, we had shows planned for this summer in Europe and Australia and in the U.S. too, and they've all been pushed back a year. So, like, all those shows are now rescheduled for 2021. So, it's kind of like the lost year of touring, which is really weird because we have the exact same dates a year from now. So it's just this weird, like, time. But we'll be out there next year rocking. Hopefully when this vaccine happens and when everybody's safe, because we're not going to go out unless it's really safe to go out, because we're not doing it. We're not doing it for our own health either. Like we just can't, next year, hopefully.
No, I hope that all comes to be, and I'm very, very excited about it. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that, I loved having you on here, Donita. I'm glad you were my first guest back on the show.
Yeah, baby.
And I want to tell everybody, please go out and see, please sit home and see. Go out and see. Go out just seems like an alien idea. I do go out sometimes, but you know what I mean. Please stay home and watch L7 Pretend We're Dead, the incredible documentary on the band. I so loved every second of it, and it was just a really incredible journey. So, Donita, thanks for doing this. And
Anytime, Matt. Anytime. And great to be on here. And everybody stay tuned for the High Low Show, episode 7.
Coming up right now. Thanks for watching.